I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the 30 years since. I know it's stated as part of the artwork that it's the final season. Well, it is and it isn't. It's the final season for that story because now the series has gone into a different place. The reason for that is I just felt that with the Anunnaki Empire pretty much being defeated, there's not going to be any direct incidents against the Anunnaki since they're pretty much all gone and wiped out now. Although I've set the seeds for future spin-offs and mini-series and even other series. In the pipeline we have Vengeance, where the old man and his daughter are pretty much hunting down the people who blew up the moon. The old man and his daughter are gifted a spaceship from the Greys, and when they're on Earth at the start they pick up some survivors from the Resistance to help them track down the Anunnaki or Nephilim warlords that blew up the moon. And with a bit of luck that'll last a few series. We've also got a mini-series planned which continues life on Earth with Chi-Chi and Henry, when a bounty hunter comes in looking for Henry and they have a massive mini war on a strip of land. That's been planned to be a 4-part mini-series, so nothing massive, but it's also going to be a nice, brutal, bloodthirsty story, I do believe. And then we've also got planned a prequel series, which is actually not quite a prequel. It's set between series 1 and series 2 of 30 years since, where the story focuses on how Chi-Chi came into the possession of the bounty. So it's basically Anna and Chi-Chi's story on why they decided to help Henry and the old man out in their battle against the Anunnaki. And then there will be some more stories after that. It's just I haven't worked those out yet, but those are the 3 storylines that I'm going to be working on to start with. And the first story out would be the Bounty Hunter one, because it's only a 4-part mini-series. And then I want to get the Bounty series done, and then we're going to go back to Vengeance and take it from there, because that will be a couple of series long, maybe 3, maybe 4, who knows. I just felt like it was about time that the certain groups within the story went their own ways, because there are more stories to be done, definitely more stories to be done, and it will be under the banner of 30 years since, but these are their own dedicated series that will go one after the other to keep the further stories going. I do like the idea of expanding the universe of 30 years since, because there's a lot to be done, but I had to end this story, the main story, because I felt that it went as far as I could take it. In comparisons with the other story podcasts that I've made, such as the Tribute to Men That Hate Their Jobs, that had a shelf life as well, and that finished, but there'll be no spin-offs on that one. But if you want to listen to it from the very beginning, there is a link in the description of this episode, so check it out. It's a good story, that. And if you don't know what that story is, it's about a man who was forced to take a job that he really hated during the pandemic because his main job got closed down by the government whilst everyone was locked down. And it just goes over the shit that he had to put up with. It's a good story, pretty funny as well. I mean, it is a comedy. It's a dark comedy, I mean real fucking dark. But I'm sure if you enjoyed this story that you'd enjoy A Tribute to Men That Hate Their Jobs. And then we have Gumshoe. I love Gumshoe. It's not had the traction that I'd hoped it would, but I'm continuing Gumshoe because there's so much material to write. So Gumshoe is about a private detective who is an absolute scumbag. His name is called Percival Vert, and he runs the P.I detective agency. He is a misogynist. He is a sleazy bastard. He's a con artist. He's violent, and his services are incredibly cheap to hire. So where the police would charge 1,000 big ones a day for an investigation, he'll only charge 250 quid a day, just so he can get the work. And because of the price, he gets the jobs that the more lucrative and better paid gumshoes don't want. After all, when the police have been defunded and you need to get justice and you have to pay for it, unfortunately some people can only afford a cheap service, and that's just how it goes. There is also a spin-off being planned for Gumshoe called London 2055, where it's essentially expanding the universe. Although Gumshoe is nowhere near finished, there's a lot of life in Gumshoe left, but I wanted to expand the universe of Gumshoe just because there's more stories to be told, and there are certain stories that you just can't be told within Percival Vert's own story because it just wouldn't work. But I have planned for a way for both sets of stories to intertwine at places because it's set in the same place and in the same year. Well, thank you very much for listening, and I do appreciate the returning listeners who have stuck with 30 years since the very beginning and listened throughout. I'm so humbled by this, and I do appreciate that you guys have hung around to listen to the story from start to finish, and I thank you for that. Until next time, guys, bye for now. Thank you for listening. Please come back next week for the next episode. If you've enjoyed this podcast, why not check out our other podcast, A Tribute to Men That Hate Their Jobs, which is a brutal but witty portrayal of working a job you hate. In this podcast, there are themes explored in which happy workers simply wouldn't understand, unless they listen to these cautionary tales from a man that lost his ideal job because of the global pandemic. Be warned that this podcast contains strong and offensive language that some listeners may not want to hear. In addition, this podcast is not recommended for younger audiences. All our podcasts are available on YouTube. Just search for the Monster X Media podcast channel. In addition, you can also find our podcasts on Amazon Music, Red Circle Podcasts, Stitcher and Spotify. We also have another YouTube channel called The X Review. This is a review and reaction channel. Not only is it on YouTube, but it is also on Brand YouTube, BitChute and Rumble. You can also find us on Facebook, Gab, Twitter and Parler. All the links are in the description below.